Why? Because of having attained a state of bliss in concentration. So this disappears, not the desire to attain nirvana. Then what, Mahamati, is the definition of the result realized by the once-returner? It means the imagination of appearances of material characteristics occurs once. Because of the non-existence of the characteristics described by notions of indicative signs, through accurate perception of the features of the processes of meditation, having come once to this world, one will enter complete nirvana to make an end of misery. That is why it is called returning once. Then how, Mahamati, does one become a non-returner? Because the false imagination associated with notional errors pertaining to the occurrence of the presence and absence of past, future, and present appearances of form is not forthcoming, and because of the disappearance of ties in the form of not returning, this is called the state of the non-returner. A saint, furthermore, Mahamati, is called a saint because of the absence of false ideas of meditations, topics of meditation, concentrations, liberations, powers, superknowledges, afflictions, and misery. Mahamati said, 3 saints have been designated by the Blessed One. To which of them is the term saint being applied here? Is it to the listener who gets the one-way path to peace, or to the one who has accumulated a fund of good, carrying out vows of bodhisattvas, or to the one that is a created projection? The Blessed One said, it applies to the one who gets the one-way path to peace, not to the others. The others, Mahamati, those who carry out the practices of bodhisattvas and those that are projections created by Buddhas, because of following commitments to a useful fund of good, they appear in assemblies in order to adorn the circles of Buddha's audiences. In this diverse teaching of different forms of alternative process, Mahamati, because of the diversity in attainment of realization, meditation, meditator, and topic of meditation, the definition of attainment is indicated through a sense of what the individual mind can see. Furthermore, Mahamati, if this should occur to one who has entered the stream, I am not bound by these ties, one will have fallen into the notion of soul, attached to duality and not free of ties. Furthermore, Mahamati, one should detach from the appearances perceived by one's own mind in order to get beyond the meditations, immeasurables, and the formless realm. An extinction of perception and sense, Mahamati, is not suitable for transcending the conditions of subjective mental objects, because of being mental content. So it is said. The meditations, immeasurables, formless concentrations, and extinction of perception, being all mental content, are not really there. The realization of stream enterer and once returner too. The realization of non-returner and sainthood too are mental confusion. Meditator, meditation, meditation topic, relinquishment, perception of truth. Whoever realizes this is only mental construction is liberated. Furthermore, Mahamati, intelligence is of 2 forms, examining intelligence and fixating immersion in grasping mentally constructed descriptions. Of these, examining intelligence is the intelligence by which the description of the particular natures is not found apart from the 4 alternatives in the process of examination, that is examining intelligence. The 4 alternatives there, Mahamati, means apart from oneness and otherness, both and neither, existence and non-existence, permanence and impermanence. I call them the 4 alternatives. It is said, Mahamati, that all things are apart from the 4 alternatives. This set of 4 alternatives, Mahamati, is to be applied in the examination of all things. Then what, Mahamati, is intelligence that fixates immersion in grasping mentally constructed descriptions. The immersion in grasping mentally constructed descriptions by which it imposes attribution of what doesn't really exist, gross elements with imagined characteristics that don't actually exist, heat, motion, fluidity, firmness due to immersion in standards defined by assertions and rationales, that is the intelligence that fixates immersion in grasping mentally constructed descriptions. This, Mahamati, is the definition of 2 forms of intelligence, equipped with which definitions of 2 kinds of intelligence bodhisattvas, having realized the intent of the definitions of selflessness of things and personalities, familiar with the stage of practice of examination with intelligence free of imposed images, attain the first stage, and are absorbed in 100 concentrations. They also see 100 Buddhas and Bodhisattvas by special attainment of concentration, and enter 100 eons into the past and future, and illumine 100 worlds. And having illumined 100 worlds, knowing the methods characteristic of the successive stages, playing with specialization of undertakings, consecrated with the anointment of clouds of teaching, having reached the stage realized first-hand by those who attain reality as such, for the sake of maturing people they illumine teachings fully furnished with 10 conclusive statements by means of diverse projected beams of light, concentrated in individual bliss. Furthermore, Mahamati, a great bodhisattva should become familiar with the major elements and derivative elements. And how, Mahamati, does a great bodhisattva become familiar with the major elements and derivative elements? There. Mahamati, a great bodhisattva hence studies that reality wherein the major elements have no composition and sees these elements as not composed. Seeing thus, by realizing that the content of imagination is only what is perceived by one's own mind, because of the non-existence of external things one observes this triple world to consist of formulation of mental objects, without major elements and derivative elements, clear of the principles of the four alternatives, without self or possession, grounded in the inherent characteristic of verity, self-evident proof of non-origination. Now then, Mahamati, how does a derivative element come to be in the major elements? The major element distinguished as moisture produces the element of water, internal and external. The major element distinguished as energy produces the element of fire, internal and external. The major element distinguished as motion produces the element of wind, internal and external. The major element distinguished as division of forms produces the element of earth along with space, internal and external. Due to immersion in a false reality, the assemblage of the 5 clusters composed of major elements and derivative elements takes place. As for consciousness, furthermore, Mahamati, consciousness occurs by reason of desire. Immersed in the domains of various matters, in conjunction with other processes. The major elements, Mahamati, are the cause of the derivative elements of the element of earth, but not of the major elements. Why? The occurrence of coordination of activities is based on grasping descriptions of appearances of things, not in what have no appearances. Thus, Mahamati, this description of major elements and derivative elements is conceived by dogmatists, not by me. Also, Mahamati, we will define the nature of the clusters. There are 5 clusters, Mahamati. What are they? Form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Of these, the 4 immaterial clusters are sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Form, Mahamati, is composed of 4 main elements, and the elements are mutually distinct, whereas the immaterial clusters, like space, cannot be reckoned as consisting of 4. Just as space, Mahamati, is beyond numerical description, yet it is imagined as space, in the same way, Mahamati, the clusters, beyond reckoning numerically, apart from existence and non-existence, apart from the 4 alternatives, are expressed numerically by the unenlightened, not by the wise. By the wise, Mahamati, they are represented as neither different nor not different, like diverse appearances of illusory forms, like phantoms in a dream. The clusters appear manifold by dint of that very adherence because of ignorance of the goal of ultimate knowledge. This, Mahamati, is the definition of the nature of the clusters. You should reject that multiplicity, Mahamati, and, having turned away, teach detachment. As detachment is being taught in the circles of the audiences of all Buddhas to refute hallowed opinions, Mahamati, perception of the selflessness of phenomena is clarified, and entry into the stage far-going comes about. Having entered the great stage far-going, one becomes master of many concentrations. And due to acquisition of the mental body, one attains concentration analogous to magic. Having attained power, superknowledge, and mastery, one becomes a support for all. beings, like the earth. Just as the great earth is the support of all beings, so, Mahamati, is a great bodhisattva, a support for all beings. Also, Mahamati, nirvana is of 4 kinds. What 4 kinds? The nirvana of the non-existence of inherent existence in things, the nirvana of the non-existence of diverse things, the nirvana of awareness of the non-existence of self-defining things, the nirvana cutting off the tie of continuity of particular and common characteristics of the clusters. These 4, Mahamati, are nirvana to dogmatists, not in my teaching. In my teaching, Mahamati, disengagement of the imagining cognitive consciousness is called nirvana. Mahamati said, haven't the consciousnesses been established as 8 by the Blessed One? The Blessed One said, they have been established, Mahamati. Mahamati said, then if they are established, Blessed One, how does disengagement of the cognitive consciousness take place without that of the other 7 consciousnesses? The Blessed One said, the operation of the 7 consciousnesses, Mahamati, takes place on its own account. Cognitive consciousness, furthermore, Mahamati, acting on immersion in discrimination of objects, fills the receptacle consciousness with impressions. The intellect goes along together in the form of thought immersed in grasping self and possession. Due to immersion in the domain of subjective mental objects dependent on the receptacle consciousness. Appearing as an integral entity, reciprocal mental disturbance takes place. Like waves of the ocean, Mahamati, driven by the winds of subjective mental objects, they start and stop. Thus, Mahamati, by the disengagement of the cognitive consciousness, the disengagement of the other 7 consciousnesses takes place. So it is said, I do not attain nirvana by a thing, an act, or a form. I attain nirvana when consciousness grounded in false imagination ceases. On its account, having ceased on it, connected to the course of the intellect. It gives cause to thought, and fixated consciousness. Just as there are no waves on a mighty current that's dried up, so variety of consciousness does not go on when it has ceased. Also, Mahamati, we will describe the principles of distinguishing imagined nature, by which definition of principles distinguishing imagined nature with suitably apt distinctions you and other great bodhisattvas, detached from the formulations of imagination, well aware of the inherent resource of first-hand wisdom and the guiding methods of dogmatists, free from imagination of grasped and grasper, will not construe the varied diverse manifestation of the dependent in the form of imagined identities. Then what is the definition of the patterns of distinctions of imagined nature? Imagination of verbal expression, imagination of signification, imagination of characteristics, imagination of value, imagination of identity, imagination of cause, imagination of opinion, imagination of connection, imagination of origination, imagination of non-origination, imagination of association, imagination of being bound or unbound. This, Mahamati, is a description of the principles of distinction of imagined nature. Then what, Mahamati, is imagination of verbal expression? It means immersion in the sweetness sung in various voices. This, Mahamati, is imagination of verbal expression. Then what, Mahamati, is imagination of signification? It imagines there is something signified that exists of itself, accessible by ultimate knowledge, based upon which verbal expression takes place. Then what is imagination of characteristics? It becomes immersed in that very signification, which appears like a mirage, by immersion in a variety of characteristics, that is to say it imagines all things in terms of heat, motion, fluidity, and solidity. Then what is imagination of value? It means talk of objects of value such as gold, silver, and jewels. Then what is imagination of identity? It means a determination of the identity of a thing, that it is this and nothing else, imagining it in terms of dogmatic constructs. Then what is imagination of cause? By whatever causal conditions the occurrence of the characteristic of cause is distinguished in relation to existence and non-existence, that is the imagination of cause. Then what is imagination of opinion? It means immersion in dogmatic constructions of erroneous notions of non-existence and existence, oneness and otherness, both and neither. Then what is the imagination of connection? It means specification of connection and separation defining self and possession. Then what is imagination of origination? It means immersion in the origination through conditions of what is present and what is not. Then what is imagination of non-origination? It means all things which have not previously originated, not having existed, come about by conditions, as groundless entities. Then what is imagination of association? It means being intimately associated together like gold and filament. Then what is imagination of being bound or unbound? It means being immersed in object and cause of bondage, like a person is tied up with rope and freed from it. Such, Mahamati, is a description of the patterns of distinction of imagined nature, in which appearances of patterns of distinction of imagined nature all unenlightened ordinary people are immersed. Engrossed in immersion in the relative as reality and unreality. Mahamati, they become engrossed in a variety of imagined identities. What appears as variety based on illusion is imagined by the unenlightened with the understanding that what they're seeing is other than illusion. An illusion, Mahamati, is none other than variety, yet not identical. Were it other, variety would not have illusion for a cause. But if it were identical, as long as there is variety there would be no distinction between illusion and variety, but the distinction is evident, so it is not other and not identical. Hence, for this reason, Mahamati, you and other great bodhisattvas should adhere to the non-existence or existence of illusion. So it is said. Cognition with mind tied to objects takes place in thought. Insight, though, operates in the domain of essence without image. Imagined identity imposed on the relative is not really there. The imagined is grasped by confusion, the relative is not imagined. Just as illusion does not prove true by multifarious occurrence. So appearance, construed as manifold, does not prove true. Thus invalid appearance is bondage occurring in the mind. What is imagined by the unknowing is conceived as relative. This existence conceived of is relative. The conceived appearance of diversity is imagined of the relative. Convention and ultimate truth there is no third causal agent. The imagined is linked to convention, by cutting it off there is the realm of the wise. Just as reality to yogis appears as one manifold. While there is no diversity there, so is imagined appearance. Just as the look of a form is imagined differently by the dim-sighted, dimness neither form nor formless, so is the relative imagined by the unaware. Like gold when pure, water when free of pollution, and the sky when cloudless, thus is the imagined pure, there is no imagined existence, but the relative is there, yet it is lost to the one constructing attribution or denial. If the imagined were non-existent due to relativity. Without existence, existence is existence originating in non-existence. The relative is apprehended based on the imagined. The imagined is born from association of appearance and name. Never having become real, what's imagined is not evident to others, then pure essence in the highest sense is intuited. 10 kinds of the imagined, 6 kinds of relative. And what is known as such first-hand there is nothing more. The 5 elements are factual, and so the 3 natures. The yogi who evokes this in contemplation does not go beyond verity. Appearance is relative, name is imagined. While imagined appearance proceeds from relativity. Examined intelligently, though, there is neither relative nor imagined, there is no absolute existence. How could it be imagined by intelligence? Absolute existence is apart from existence and non-existence. Without existence and non-existence, how can there be those 2 natures? It is in the context of imagined nature that the 2 natures are established as 2. The imagined seems diverse, but the realm of the wise is pure. For the artificial appearance of diversity is imagined in relative terms, thinking otherwise, one would be devoted to dogmatics. Thought is said to be artificial, being based on perception, that which is free of the imagined too is itself the absolute. Then Mahamati said, let the Blessed One indicate to me the definition of the goal of first-hand ultimate knowledge and the one vehicle, by which description of first-hand attainment of the one vehicle I and other great bodhisattvas, familiar with the one vehicle of first-hand ultimate knowledge, may come to need no guide in the teachings of Buddhas. The Blessed One said, then listen, Mahamati, and take it to heart accurately and aptly, I will tell you. Very well, Blessed One. So saying, Mahamati listened to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said this to him, by the absence of imagination based on statements taken on authority. Mahamati, a great bodhisattva, reflects alone with inherent individual intelligence, not needing another's guidance, avoiding notional imagination, strives for successive entry into the stages of those who arrive at reality as such. This, Mahamati, is a definition of the goal of first-hand ultimate knowledge. Then what is the definition of the goal of the one vehicle? By virtue of awakening by attainment of the path of one vehicle, I call it one vehicle. What is awakening by attainment of the path of one vehicle? When false imagination ceases to operate by abiding in the truth of object and subject as a false dichotomy, awakening to the one vehicle is accomplished. This awakening to the one vehicle, Mahamati, has never before been attained by any other religious leaders, hearers, solitary illuminates, priests, or anyone else but me. Hence, for this reason, Mahamati, it is called the unique vehicle. Mahamati said, for what reason have three vehicles been taught by the Blessed One, while the one vehicle is not taught? The Blessed One said, I don't speak of the one vehicle to any hearers or solitary illuminates because they have no way to attain complete nirvana on their own, for which reason, Mahamati, all hearers and solitary illuminates are liberated by the instruction of the realized applying specific knowledge of discipline, not on their own. Also, Mahamati, the one vehicle is not for the hearers and solitary illuminates because they are not free from the obstruction of knowledge and the influences of action. Because they have not realized the selflessness of phenomena, and have not attained disappearance by inconceivable transformation, I teach three vehicles to hearers. When all harmful influences are gone from them by realization of selflessness of phenomena, then they wake up in the realm devoid of impulse, due to absence of intoxication by absorption in the negative effects of influences. Moreover, after having fulfilled the requirements of the transmundane realm without impulse, they will attain mastery of the inconceivable reality body. So it is said. The celestial vehicle, the vehicle of priests, and that of hearers too, that of the realized and the solitary of these vehicles I speak. There is no fixity of vehicles as long as thought operates. When thought is disengaged, there is neither vehicle nor traveler. There is no constancy of vehicle, I speak of distinction of vehicles. It is in order to attract the unenlightened that I speak of distinction of vehicles. The three liberations, thus, and even selflessness of things amount to affliction by the knowledge of equality. They are abandoned by emancipation. Just as a piece of wood is carried away by waves in the ocean, so is the deluded hearer carried along by appearances. Those bound by the affliction of inclinations but not fettered by compulsions, intoxicated by the wine of concentration, stay in the realm devoid of impulse. It has no permanent goal, but doesn't disappear either. Having attained a body of concentration, one never awakens till the end of time. Just as a drunken person wakes up when there's no wine, so will they acquire the body of mind known as the enlightened state. 3. Impermanence.